Arena on AM 560, The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. So yesterday, the Israelis made surgical strikes in Qatar to targeting a couple of Hamas leaders. The Israeli Defense Forces issued the following statement. The IDF and Shin Bet, or the Israeli Security Agency, that is, IDF and ISA conducted a precise strike targeting the senior leadership of the Hamas terrorist organization. For years, these members of the Hamas leadership have led the terrorist organization's operations, are directly responsible for the brutal October 7th massacre, and have been orchestrating and managing the war against the state of Israel. Prior to the strike, measures were taken in order to mitigate harm to civilians, including the use of precise munitions and additional intelligence. The IDF and ISA will continue to operate with determination in order to defeat the Hamas terrorist organization responsible for the October 7th massacre. Well, that was not sufficient for such international moral voices like Antonio Guterres at the UN. Qatar has been playing a very positive role to achieve a ceasefire and release all of the hostages. I condemn this flagrant violation of the sovereignty and international integrity of Qatar. All parties must work together towards achieving a permanent ceasefire. Well, I mean, to borrow from Marco Rubio earlier in the week, who cares what the UN says? And number one, and number two, Qatar has been playing a very positive role to achieve a ceasefire and release all the hostages. That's not true. Not true. Nonetheless, there was some pushback from the Trump administration. White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt saying the following.
This morning, the Trump administration was notified by the United States military that as Israel was attacking Hamas, which very unfortunately was located in a section of Doha, the capital of Qatar. Unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally of the United States that is working very hard and bravely taking risks with us to broker peace, does not advance Israel or America's goals. However, eliminating Hamas, who have profited off the misery of those living in Gaza, is a worthy goal. President Trump immediately directed Special Envoy Witkoff to inform the Qataris of the impending attack, which he did. The president views Qatar as a strong ally and friend of the United States and feels very badly about the location of this attack. President Trump wants all of the hostages in Gaza and the bodies of the dead released, and this war to end now. President Trump also spoke to Prime Minister Netanyahu after the attack. The Prime Minister told President Trump that he wants to make peace, and quickly. President Trump believes this unfortunate incident could serve as an opportunity for peace. The president also spoke to the Emir and Prime Minister of Qatar and thanked them for their support and friendship to our country. He assured them that such a thing will not happen again on their soil.
I don't know if I'd go making such assurances, and I don't know about the sort of moral equivocation there, frankly, especially since earlier in the week, the president posted on Truth Social, everyone wants the hostages home. Everyone wants this war to end. The Israelis have accepted my terms. It's time for Hamas to accept as well. I've warned Hamas about the consequences of not accepting. This is my last warning. There will not be another one. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Of course, the usual close. But I don't think that Hamas leadership in Qatar is paying attention to this matter. So I'm not really on board for the administration's posture with respect to these targeted strikes at Hamas leaders that are being provided sanctuary in Qatar. That's my view. Let's get another view. Dominic Green is a columnist for the Washington Examiner. He's also a contributor to the Wall Street Journal and a fellow of the Royal Historical Society. Dominic, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan.
So I know the UK's PM, two-tier Keir, and his buddy Macron are threatening, to the extent that their threats are meaningful, threatening Israel with a recognition of some Palestinian statehood somewhere if Israel doesn't come to terms and end the hostilities or change the way they're fighting the war in a way that's compliant with the demands of the UK and the French. But what is your view on what Israel did here and the larger dynamic right now in Gaza?
Well, my first view is that it's a good thing that Israel has demonstrated yet again that the worst kind of terrorists should have nowhere to hide. There was a time when everybody understood that, and the position taken by Britain and France, not for the first time, is a disgrace. The second question is, the strike's done, what is the goal after that? And in the rather pained attempt of Catherine Levitt there to try and square the circle, you can see that, the Trump administration wants to create some kind of diplomatic exit, doesn't want the war to go on forever. It wants it to be ended on terms that are favorable to Israel, not to Hamas. That's a big difference, of course, from how the Biden administration viewed this. But the Trump administration is looking at its entire regional picture and how beating Hamas benefits all kinds of American clients in the region, including its allies in the Gulf, and how obviously leaving Hamas in place is a win for Iran and for the supporters of terrorism, who in this case include Turkey and Qatar. And Turkey and Qatar are both allies of the United States. Qatar is a non-NATO ally, designated by Joe Biden as such. So there's a lot of pieces in the jigsaw, and when you hear this thing, it almost sounds like double talk or gobbledygook. It doesn't add up. It's a good thing to hit the terrorists, but not a good thing to do it, is effectively the message of the day after. That's a way, I think, of trying to create a political step out of this, and we shouldn't take the wording too seriously. It's trying to create a political exit that's the actual goal here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, I understand, but the problem is it's a little further complicated by the distressingly cozy relationship that Trump has forged with Qataris, for example. Accepting in theory a plane from them, and then you make a statement like this. It just doesn't. It doesn't. It has the appearance of I wouldn't say impropriety, but it has the appearance of a conflict.
Oh, totally. I mean, once you accept a gift of that kind of scale, and once your son, as Don Jr. is doing, is getting a deal for developing golf courses.
Dominic, I'm having a little bit of a difficult time hearing you.
Sorry, is this any better?
Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Great. Once the president accepts a gift on that scale, and once his son has got a deal to develop a golf course in Qatar, then obviously it starts to look blurred. And the two blurrings, as it were, the blurring of where the line between public and private is, and the blurring of the line between the national interest and the private interest, these things are very hard to extrapolate. And I don't doubt that Qatar's enormous influence in the United States has helped it maintain this implausible balancing act where it's simultaneously hosting Hamas, it's hosting this media instrument, Al Jazeera, which is like a global Islamist propaganda platform. It's pouring, I believe, an estimated $7 billion into the universities of the United States. It's doing all these things, and yet somehow acting as if it's a neutral figure in all of this. It's not. It's an Islamist propagandist state that has thrown billions around all over the world in order to buy what it believed was an immunity for the consequences of its actions.
Yeah. I want to get to your reaction at something else that bubbled up to the surface this week in the same topic area. And this was Tucker Carlson on his interview show on X, interviewed a former State Department official who had recently been separated from his job. And part of the argument was that he had penned a cable from the State Department that expressed condolences to the families of alleged journalists who were killed in Gaza. And I say allege because there's some questions about just exactly whether they were journalists or something different. And Tucker Carlson sort of picked up on this thread and said this.
Let me just say, I would be totally comfortable sharing condolences with Osama bin Laden's family. I hate Osama bin Laden. On the other hand, if somebody dies, it's okay to say, I'm sorry to his family that
he had a toddler.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's immaterial. I would say that to the family of an executed murderer in a prison. It doesn't mean I support the murder or the murderer, but this is family. Like, that's okay. That's called like human decency. And anyone who's against that,
yeah, and it seemed like we're setting up.
Is that right? Anybody who wouldn't express condolences to the family of bin Laden is against human decency?
No, of course not. Just about everything Tucker Carlson says these days is nonsense. I haven't noticed him extending any condolences or human decency to the families of the Israelis who were massacred on October the 7th. He strikes me as someone, I'm reminded of Dr. Johnson's line, man makes a beast of himself to forget the pain of living. I think he's very justifiably, in some cases, distressed by how the United States has not turned out to be the country he wanted it to be or thought it was. But his reaction to that is a sort of nihilistic thing of, well, if I can't have it, no one else can. It's a real problem, actually, on the right, that there are these people who are really trying their best to pull things down rather than build things up. But no, I don't think that that's true at all. I have nothing to say to any member of the bin Laden family, and I don't think most people do either.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I could muster would be like Churchill's condolences on the passing of Stanley Baldwin, which is to say, I'm sorry he died, but it would have been better had he never lived.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
Precisely.
So I want to get to something else, too. Nigel Farage was in town this week to testify before House Committee on Free Speech, something that seems to be going out of style in the UK. This was, and I know you wrote about this Irish comedian that was arrested for tweets. Farage had this to say about that.
Graham Linehan, the comedy writer, comedic writer, and he put out some tweets months ago when he was in Arizona. And months later, he arrives at Heathrow Airport to be met by 5 armed police. He was arrested and taken away for questioning. This could happen to any American man or woman that goes to Heathrow that has said things online that the British government and British police don't like.
It's going to put a bit of a damp on American tourism to the UK, I think.
Just a little. And by the way, everything that Farage says in that clip is absolutely true. And it is unconscionable that foreign citizens could be arrested for something that they've said overseas using an American-owned and American-made app like X on the civilian internet, which is an American invention. It's part of a global picture, which is as the great powers reassert themselves and the world becomes one of spheres of influence, the internet also broken down into different spheres. You know, there's a different internet in China from the one in the US. And there's also a different internet in Europe, which does not have a great tradition of free speech at all. It's not true. The idea of free speech comes from England, and it's an Anglophone civilization that really prizes it. And the British government doesn't trust its own people and is really more sympathetic to a repressive European-style internet than the open and free American one. And so they've created mechanisms which allows people to go after you for things like, as you know, Graham Linehan's speech was, if I could repeat it, he said that if a man goes into a woman's changing room, you should call for help or call the police or, in the last resort, and I quote, kick him in the balls.
Right.
Now, that's a little spicy, but no one should be arrested for that. And I'd just like to add, I wholeheartedly endorse that, and I think the vast majority of British people do as well. And yet the police are able to be mobilized by a small number of resentful, demented activists and mobilized against people doing what, you know, if Graham Linehan goes to court, there's no question he would get off in Britain, unquestionably. They laugh it out of court. And I hope that he sues the police for wrongful arrest as well. It's absolutely crazy, but we are where we are. And the United States, I mean, I was in Washington last week and I actually ran into Nigel Farage at one point, and I spoke with people in the administration, and they all said the same thing, that the British government, Keir Starmer's government, looks at the United States and wants to talk about trade terms and financial stuff. But the Trump administration is trying to build its alliances for the long run, and it wants Britain to be part of its internet and its alliances. And so the British government is heading and is creating actually just a serious conflict out of nothing by doing things like this. And it's going to end up by damaging the British economy. So maybe they will listen at that point.
You know, Trump also had, in one of his meetings with Starmer over here, had said, I think it was here, that, had sort of said, you really need to think about enforcing immigration laws. and Starmer basically said, he had made this announcement that seemed to be at odds with where labor is generally, that, we're going to have to start moving people out of this country that are here illegally and so on and so forth. But there's some question about, what his real commitment beyond a rhetorical one was to doing anything like that. Yeah. And so what is the state of that?
Well, the state of that is this, that Starmer is a human rights lawyer who knows perfectly well that when he says we would like to do this or we intend to do this, it means nothing unless the law allows it. He is not serious about changing the law. He's just appointed as Home Secretary who would be responsible for this stuff. Shabana Mahmood, who is also of a similar activist frame of mind and has a long history of efforts to boycott, divest from Israel, and previously voted against kicking out convicted criminals. So I don't believe that she is going to be any more willing, perhaps willing, but certainly not more able to force through these kinds of changes. What is needed is a complete overhaul and enforcement of the laws. And the Labour Party is not going to do that, not least because core elements of their voter base benefit from non-enforcement or the weak enforcement of immigration laws. It's much like the Democrats in the U.S.
So I mean, the UK is going to continue sliding away based on what you're saying with respect to free speech and secure borders.
I would expect at least another year of slide. I expect that things are going to hit a wall, probably a financial one, and that they may possibly, certainly Starmer will be gone before 2029, which is when the next elections have to be held. But I think the election is going to be before then. I think they will call an election in late 26, perhaps early 27, sometime around then. The country has become ungovernable, and the party who arrived in power a year ago, full of bright ideas, have completely disintegrated under pressure, just as the previous conservative ones did, which indicates that the problem isn't just one party or the other, it's systemic. In the same way as Donald Trump saw that, and many people around him understand that, but the problems of the United States were systemic ones. And Britain has only now I think people are beginning to grasp it. Actually, we've got to do something drastic in the way that Thatcher did after 1979. And it's going to be an ugly business in the long haul, I think.
All right, well, what everyone wants to know is, what is it going to take to get Prince Harry and King Charles together? Because that's where it all starts to turn around.
My personal opinion is, what is it going to take to keep Harry in California? Britain is running out of money, but I think there would be massive public support for sending some of it to keep him there. No, I hope that they're reconciled, and I hope they do it in a neutral location like in Iceland or somewhere like that, halfway.
Dominic Green, columnist for the Washington Examiner, contributor to the Wall Street Journal, and fellow of the Royal Historical Society. Dominic, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
Take care. And Dominic joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
When it comes to industrial coating and finishing, cutting corners isn't an option.